we found that we had probably tripled the percentage of grades coming from writing assignments. And I think it happened not because we required anything. We didn't change the curriculum at all. We just got faculty to better recognize that there was an issue, and that through those conversations that there were possibilities for writing assignments that didn't necessarily require faculty to invest enormous numbers of hours in grading writing assignments.
Just heard Michael Stoloff from James Madison University in Harrisonsburg, Virginia. Garth and guest host Jane Halonen from the University of West Florida interviewed Michael as part of the Psych Sessions 2023 East Coast Tour for episode 184 of Psych Sessions, Conversations about Teaching and Stuff.
Macmillan Psychology's Achieve for Psychology is here to help you build academic integrity in the classroom, because it's not just about cheating, it's about increasing positive behaviors. Achieve helps you build academic integrity in the classroom through goal setting and reflection surveys. These frequent low-stakes assignments prepare students for exams and thus reduce course stresses that can lead to cheating. Achieve's goal setting and reflection surveys also help students set personal goals and provide instructors meaningful ways to check in with students and their goals. Again, helping students feel more comfortable in class and with study materials helps instructors keep academic dishonesty out of the classroom. Preview how Achieve helps build academic integrity in the classroom at macmillanlearning.com/psych sessions. The Psych Sessions podcast is sponsored by STP. That is the Society for the Teaching of Psychology. That's APA Division 2. You can find them at teachpsych.org. The views or product endorsements expressed do not represent the views, support, or endorsements of STP. Psych Sessions is so grateful to have STP as a long-term supporter. We've all seen the research. Retrieval practice increases student performance. But that doesn't mean that taking quizzes is popular among students. At W.W. Norton, they think assessment can be fun. So if you and your students are tired of those same old multiple choice questions, mix it up with Inquisitive, W.W. Norton's award-winning adaptive assessment. Created by a cognitive psychologist, Inquisitive utilizes gaming principles and interactive question types to engage students with more active than static multiple choice questions. Students wager points on each question, utilizing strategies of prediction for metacognitive monitoring. With the ability to control their grade by how many questions they answer, almost all students continue working until they have earned a grade they're satisfied with, thus rewarding effort and fostering a growth mindset. Want to see what your students think of Inquisitive? For Psych Sessions listeners new to Inquisitive, you can try it for free the next time you teach. Just go to siegel.wwnorton.com/psych sessions. That's Siegel, like the bird, SEAGULL.wwnorton.com/psych sessions. And the folks at WW Norton will even integrate it into your LMS for you. Hi, folks. This is Garth. I am here with Jane Halonen, and you've just heard Michael Stoloff talking about teaching. And Jane, that clip was one that I thought really reflected Michael's thoughtful contribution to helping teachers and helping professors of psychology do their jobs better for the sake of students.
I think you're right about that, Garth. He is a real hero in psychological assessment, simply describing that protocol that he used to try to get a better outcome without it being onerous or awful. I think that's the approach he takes in working with faculty and in bringing out the best in students. And so I think that really came through in the interview.
Undoubtedly, when he speaks, it's really clear to me that a lot of reflection has gone into those kinds of decisions he makes. Like you don't have to hammer people with things. You can make it appealing. So even something like assessment, Jane, I know, shocking that somebody could like assessment. It sounds like Michael does.
Michael is an expert. I think what the program that he helped to create at James Madison represents a true national model. And his commitment to psychology is strong enough that he stays active in program reviewing, for example, even though he's moved on to higher administration at James Madison. He stays integrally involved in all things psychology.
Yeah, he was on Guidelines 3.0. That's where I got to know him a little bit. Of course, Jane, you were a part of that as well, running the show with the crew. And I just always appreciate the way that he processes and thinks through the questions and difficult questions sometimes that we are asking. One thing that stuck out to me in this interview is that he really wants to leave an impact on higher education, on students, on his colleagues. He wants to have a positive and growing impact. I think that is very, very neat, and he's not ashamed about it.
I think to add, when he speaks, you darn well better listen, because he's going to be producing something that's valuable.
Perfect. Well, I think that's a nice way to leave our little introduction here and introduce Michael Stoloff. Please enjoy this interview. How has, maybe just talk to each other. I'm just going to check our levels. How has your day been, Michael, so far, seeing your old pal here?
I am loving it.
Yeah.
I am loving it. I miss me seeing Jane.
Yeah.
We were professional friends. We were also personal friends. And
deep personal
we did
friends.
Lots of things together when she was here. And she was a great boss. Great colleagues, continues to be a great colleague.
Gosh, I hope you say that when we're on.
You know what? I'm recording this and I'm going to include it. So, why don't we just jump in, because I think our levels are great.
All right.
And this will be kind of a fun opening to have a little soft opening. Folks, I am in the basement of, not locked in the basement, but I am in the basement of Dr. Michael Stoloff from James Madison University. And Michael is the Associate Dean of the Graduate School, which is going to take some explaining, Michael. But thanks for doing this. We've only met online working on guidelines, maybe something else, I'm not sure. But it's really nice to be here and see you in person. And thank you for having my co-host Jane and I with you today and doing this with us. As folks just heard, you have a rich, long history together.
We do.
And so it's pretty fun to, I know you've been hanging out for hours as I've been at a conference online today. So I'm glad you're not sick of each other yet, Jane.
Nope.
Yeah. All right.
It would take a lot for us to be sick of each other.
Well, fantastic.
Yeah.
Michael, do you want to explain a little bit about what you do at JMU?
Sure. I am the Associate Dean of the Graduate School. The Graduate School is the administrative office at the university, James Madison University, that manages various operations within all the graduate programs of the university. We're responsible for recruitment across the university, admissions of graduate students. We receive recommendations from programs regarding which students to accept, and we issue the admission letters to the appropriate students. We manage the contracts for graduate assistantships. We help support students during their careers, and we also check to see if students have completed all the requirements for graduation, which we manage, the graduate school graduation event.
Okay, so it's a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah. And there's a pathway to get there. And I, at some point in our conversation today, I'd like to just kind of follow the pathway. But Jane, what do you want to jump in with here with your good pal? Where do we want to start?
Well, I think I'd like to start with a bit of backstory, because I think most of our listeners do want to know who's talking and how did they get here. And so if you could at least say, was there any particular point in your academic journey where you said, "Ooh, psychology is my home"? How did you decide that this would be your direction?
That's a good question. It was a long time ago, so I'll think carefully back 45 years or maybe more. And at that time, I went to college. I was the first in my family to go to college. My parents expected me to go because that's what people did in the 70s. They went to college. I really didn't know what I was going to study. I thought I would be pre-med, but botany killed me. Organic chemistry actually was quite difficult for me as well. So I changed. I tried geology. That didn't last very long. Anthropology was a little bit better. And then I hit psychology. And the psychology courses were really interesting. And I was doing quite well in those courses. I liked it. But I really started to love it when I was invited by a graduate student to help with research in his lab as an undergraduate. And I did research as a junior. I later moved to an animal research lab, and I did another year of research with Skip Spear, who is a nationally known scholar in memory. And we did really interesting experiments, although my father thought it was really weird when he toured the lab where I was working. He thought I was working in a place that was filled with torture chambers for rats because they were all aversive conditioning studies. And we had 14 different ways of electrocuting rats into doing things, which seemed really cruel and terrible, and perhaps it was. But I was learning a lot. And I was enjoying it quite a bit.
Michael, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Queens, New York, and then Long Island.
And was school nearby, or where did you do your undergraduate?
School was about 5 hours away, which was about the optimal distance from home. Close enough that I can go home when I wanted to, not so close that my parents would just drop in on me.
And what institution was it?
It was Binghamton University. Yeah, SUNY Binghamton at that time.
Okay.
And then how about next steps when you graduated from there?
I graduated from there and wanted to go into experimental psychology. So I applied all over the country, and I actually ended up at Johns Hopkins. I found out later the recommendation from Skip Spear was instrumental in my getting in there because my advisor needed somebody who could come in while he was going to be away on a sabbatical and do okay independently. And so I got there. He gave me a little orientation to the place, told me what I'd be doing for my graduate assistantship, and then he left. And I had to fend for myself for that first year, but it was okay. It worked out pretty well. I was successful and graduated from there after 4 years. Yeah.
Could it have been even an advantage that you ended up with someone that threw you into the deep end of the pool and it made you discover some strengths you might not have known you had?
He was a wonderful advisor, Elliot Blass. He helped stretch me, helped me stretch to achieve things that I really didn't think that I would achieve. And he had a very collaborative team approach to his graduate students. There was one graduate student in every year. So we had four, first, second, third, and fourth year graduate students. Every year I was there, plus a postdoc. And we worked in teams. We worked on each other's research. We discussed each other's research as we planned processes. And I really developed a lot of expertise, not so much from taking research classes, but by designing research projects. And in fact, that's the nature of the instruction at Hopkins for all the animal research labs. The four labs would get together every week and talk about research the graduate students were doing and critique each other's research plans, our preliminary findings, our later findings, how we were discussing the information, how we were interpreting the findings. And that practice was wonderful. And it's actually influenced tremendously my teaching. Especially when I was teaching courses in research methodology, which was one of my favorite classes for many years, as well as general psychology and other experimental psychology-oriented courses, of which I taught most of the curriculum.
What would you do in a research methods class? How did you carry that forward into your teaching?
Well, in my undergraduate class, I'd often start with a problem, an issue that we could analyze, and I'd ask students to help operationalize the question so that we had clear variables that we were going to study. Then we brainstormed ideas for this. And this was the olden days when we used overhead projectors, and I write down ideas as they emerged. And when the class had developed quite a few ideas, I pick one that seemed to make sense to me, and I'd have them work through that so that by the end of the class, we had illustrated one of the research methodological approaches. And they will have demonstrated it and studied it a bit. And it was the methodology I wanted to convey in that class, but they would have studied it by developing a project that could be done in that way, using that sort of methodology.
Yeah. Really hands-on sort of interaction.
Oh, it was totally interactive. I never knew what I was going to do in the class because it would have to evolve during the class. I knew what what methodological technique I needed to cover and what are some of the key factors that needed to be covered in that lesson. But exactly how I would approach it depended upon what the students came up with for an idea for a project, and the exact order in which things were discussed really depended upon what happened during the class.
That's a lot of risk to take on.
Yeah, it didn't always work. But if it didn't work, there was always the next class, and I can go back and try again, or I can do a little bit more structured, quick lesson to get some of the key things out that didn't come out in the first round. Mm-hmm. And students seemed to like it, and I enjoyed trying to make it happen.
I'm interested in that. So what might not have worked that you would have to circle back to? And would it occur to you in the moment that this is not working? Or would you sit back after class and think, I don't think we got to these couple specific things that I really wanted to get to? Did you need to undo some things, or did you just need to add to what was being done?
No, I think it was sometimes hard to get students to think about things as experiments. Students would often come up with survey ideas or ideas that were quasi-experiments, but not necessarily the methodology I needed to cover in the particular class. So I might be stretching their ideas a bit to make them fit. I rarely had to go back, at least my recollection is I rarely remember going back and undoing something because they were still reasonable research ideas that were emerging. It just wasn't necessarily the research methodology that I wanted to cover, and there may have been some things left out with the particular project. Some things may not have been relevant, and so I couldn't really weave them into the conversation. So I'd have to add some things a little bit later, maybe in the next class, to make sure that all the details were covered. But at that point, the students had an idea of what the methodology was all about, and it was a short lecture before we went on to the next thing, just to make sure that key points were covered and everything was clear and questions that may have emerged could be answered.
I'll just one more question based on this. Did you always consider yourself, or did you know that this was innovative at the time? I imagine that you could teach a research methods class and that colleagues might have been teaching it on a more lecture basis, that would have been quite normal at the time. Did you feel like you were doing something a little out of the ordinary?
No, I don't think I was thinking about it that way. I was enjoying it because it was fairly consistent with what I did in graduate school,
Right.
to try to, sit down in a meeting and someone would say, we want to study this topic. How do we approach it? And we would tear it apart. We'd try to identify the relevant variables. We would try to figure out how to control for those variables or how to select participants. In this case, it was often animals, to be able to have findings that would be interpretable and not easily explained by something other than the factors that were under our control.
Yeah.
So at what point did you decide that the professor's life was going to be the one you would lead?
That was fairly early, I think, when I was in college, and I saw my professor. I keep thinking about Skip Spear, and later Elliot Blass in graduate school too. I really thought they had a good life. They had a lot of control of their daily activities. They could study what they wanted to study, and they could study interesting problems. I liked teaching. I probably liked teaching more than Elliot liked teaching, because he really didn't want me to go to a public university. He thought a better life for me would have been maybe to be a grants administrator, or maybe a Research One faculty member that would teach a little bit, but mostly would be conducting research. But I saw what I had experienced myself as a first-generation college student, and how it had impacted my thinking about so many things to have gone through that college experience. And so I really wanted to have that sort of impact on other students, who would include many first-generation students and students who really would benefit from teachers who cared about them, and teachers who tried to explain things well to them. And so I wanted to do the same thing.
Okay.
And I wanted a position also that would allow me to have research teams. And as a faculty member, I always had research teams, sometimes large groups of students who were working on projects with me. And these were usually undergraduate students, although sometimes I had a graduate student in the mix. And that was one of my favorite parts of the position. Plus, I thought you can be off in the summers, which didn't turn out not to be completely true, but you can be unpaid in the summers, but you wouldn't necessarily stop working in the summers.
That's really a good distinction to draw.
Yeah.
You can be off but not paid.
Yeah. That was how it actually turned out. But I didn't mind it, because it did allow me to do some really exceptional things.
I remember before we started, I think you were talking about your dad and explained to your dad what kind of a doctor you were going to be. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
He and my mother both thought I should be a physician. You should be a doctor, but this PhD kind of doctor, what is that? They really didn't understand what that role was, or why that was important or interesting thing to do. Why would I want to do this? And then, having seen the torture chambers for rats, they really didn't understand what I was doing. And perhaps as a faculty member, they still had that. They didn't completely understand what I was doing. They understood I was a teacher, and that made sense. But the research was kind of odd, why I would be doing this kind of research, until later, and actually in my current role, which includes student recruitment for all graduate programs. And basically what I'm doing now is selling graduate education at JMU as a wonderful opportunity for students. And my father was always a salesperson, and he really understood what salespeople do. And so we currently, at 99, still have conversations. He's 99. Have conversations about his work and my work, and the overlap between the process of selling, in his case, artist materials to art firms and marketing firms on Madison Avenue, and my work trying to convey the opportunities available for graduate education at our university.
There's a really nice thread through your story of just your value, just how much higher education meant to you, and then finding in graduate school this group of people. And we've heard this story a lot recently in interviewing people, just finding their people in graduate school to have these stimulating conversations and relationships around education. And then I can just hear the student-centeredness of your story. I imagine we're going to get to the middle part of your story, and that student-centeredness is going to be kind of right there.
But first, let me ask this question. Yeah. Often in the interviews that show up in the psych sessions, there's a discussion about, were you trained as a teacher, or when you hit the ground as a hired professor, were you starting from scratch?
I was not trained as a teacher. I never had a course in how to teach. I didn't start reading books on teaching until I had already been a faculty member for a couple of years in the 80s. But I did have some experiences, mostly because I needed more money than my graduate assistantship would provide. I taught part-time at Towson State while I was in Baltimore at Hopkins for 2 years. I had taught maybe 6 different courses, different topics, several times. Every semester I had 2 courses. And that was a great opportunity for me to practice teaching and learn something about teaching, mostly by trying things out. So by the time I finished, I had some teaching experience, which actually helped me get the position offers that I received right out of graduate school. But it allowed me to practice. Now, if I go back, and I did go back to clean my house at one point, and look at the notes that I was using in those classes, I would never do that again that way. But it was a good start. I had to start somewhere. And it was an opportunity to teach undergraduates while I was a graduate student as the primary instructor.
Was JMU the offer that you accepted out of the ones that materialized after graduation?
No. First, I taught at Northern Michigan University, a 1-year sabbatical replacement position. JMU had actually invited me for an interview, but they lost the position before I actually came for the interview. Then the following year, they got the position back, and they told me and asked me to come and made me the offer. And so that's where I ended up, and it hit many of the buttons that it needed to. It was a public university, pretty good quality, very student-centered. I could teach the courses in the area of experimental psychology that I wanted. They had lab space available to me, and they liked the idea that I was going to work with students. They were doing that already, but they wanted to do more of this independent work with students and honors thesis with students. They did not want someone who was too graduate focused, because that's the nature of the university, and I wasn't. I wanted to teach undergraduate students. And it was within driving distance of where my parents lived and where my wife's parents lived. So it was a reasonable location.
And you moved from being an assistant professor into multiple roles at the university, including the one that you play now. But can you talk a little bit about that pathway?
Yeah, when I was in high school, I realized that I like to lead things. I was the editor of the high school newspaper, not because I was the best writer, but I like to organize the newspaper and get people to write various things and put out this product. And there was something tangible that resulted from the work of a group of people who I was collaborating with. So I became assistant, associate, full professor. When the opportunity appeared for me to be the director of the psychological sciences master's program, I jumped on that and did that. And from there became the director of the undergraduate psychology program within a department that had many graduate programs and the undergraduate program. And I did that for 10 years before becoming the unit head, the chair of the psychology department. After you, Jane, after you vacated that. And then when the opportunity came to further expand my influence, I took a position as an associate dean in a college, and then the associate dean of the graduate school, which is a university-wide role. So those administrative positions all allowed me to fulfill the same sort of thing that I did with the high school newspaper editorship, which was to lead a group of people in an effort. And from then, I discovered all along that I can have more influence on what goes on in an administrative role than I could as an individual faculty member. As an individual faculty member, I can impact all the students in my classes, my advisees, students who work with me on research projects. There's a significant number of people, especially when you think about it over time. But as these various administrative positions, I could influence the work of multiple people. I could facilitate the work of multiple people and influence people maybe indirectly. Indirectly, I would influence the students by making opportunities available. You know, a good example would be instead of just having 6 or 10 students work with me on research in a year, I could actually lead a department that would have 200 students involved in research by promoting and facilitating research activities that were being supervised by multiple faculty. I could influence the teaching in the department, not only by improving my own teaching, by influencing the teaching of the faculty that I collaborated with in my department.
Those are good reasons. I know a lot of faculty consider moving into administrative roles as turning to the dark side. You've heard that phrase, I suspect.
Yes, of course.
Is it offensive to you when someone refers to it that way?
No, it's not offensive. I think there is a dark side to the administration in that universities are businesses, and they have to operate, even if they're nonprofit businesses, they have to operate with a balanced budget, and they have to make global decisions, and sometimes those decisions are not favorable to faculty, and that would be the dark side. But I don't focus on that. I think of these positions more as opportunities to help people do their work, to make opportunities available for faculty to do their best work, and to achieve their own goals as faculty and help students in your departments achieve their goals as students. And focusing on this accomplish a lot. And in fact, my favorite part of my current position is actually it's hard to describe my position because it's a lot of different things. But I'm primarily responsible for getting things we don't currently have. So that is a thing that I really like. I help us get students that we don't currently have. I help when I work with curriculum matters, getting new programs and courses that we don't currently have, or fixing problems that are policies or procedures that we have that aren't working very well, to change them so that we have procedures and policies that work better. So it's kind of fun to see us improving as a result of work that I'm doing.
So are you in the classroom right now, or have you, or how long has it been since you were teaching a course?
I probably haven't taught for 5 years my own individual course. I do things that are very much related to teaching, like working with staff members on their writing, and working with individual graduate students on projects that I'm supervising. as they are graduate assistants trying to help me do my work. They're learning as they do this. I greatly benefit from my understanding of the faculty role in doing things like shaping curriculum or helping to get the right students through the admission processes. The right students being students who are likely to be successful in their programs, because I think I understand what it takes to be successful in those programs, and that's because I've been a faculty member. But I really am not in a teaching role, mostly because there's no time for it. My job is pretty big. At one time, there were 2 associate deans. Now there's only 1. And so my time is pretty limited.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're okay with it. It sounds like, I mean, you might miss teaching, but you're okay not teaching right now.
Yeah, I taught for 40 years.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it might have been time to move on and do something else after that.
And you're not in the psychology department anymore.
That's right.
So how was it to, after being in the psychology department for so long, and I imagine there's a lot of relationships there that you've built over your time at JMU, and how was it to move into a new building, new office?
Well, I found it okay. I continue to have friends in the psychology department. My wife still is in the psychology department. That helps me stay connected to other people. But the transition was actually very gradual, and I didn't really give it up suddenly. Even though I went into the administrative role, I continued to be at first teaching and going to faculty meetings. Then I gave up teaching, but I continued to go to faculty meetings. And I only reluctantly gave up going to official meetings because I just couldn't find the time to do everything. And that's the thing that had to go at some point. But it was sort of an evolution away. It wasn't a sudden jump. And I still find myself somewhat connected in that I'm still doing things related to psychology. I still do some program review work. And I have been on the Guidelines 3.0 committee, task force from APA, and enjoyed thinking again about psychology. Now probably from a little different perspective, not only from the perspective of someone who'd been a faculty member and a unit head for psychology, but also as someone who is thinking about things psychology prepares you for beyond psychology graduate school. One of the things I noticed very clearly in working at the university level is that psych majors go into lots of fields of study besides psychology. Psychology students are going into our occupational therapy program and into our physician assistant program and into communications programs that we have. Psychology majors can do many different things. Some things they can do right out of the undergraduate degree program. Other things require graduate training, but not necessarily graduate training in psychology or counseling. It's broader than that. Psychology really does prepare you for many things in a career, many different careers. It also prepares you for many relevant things in life.
Much of the research that you've done that is considered scholarship of teaching and learning is geared in that direction. I know an article that you wrote, I believe in 2010, looked at what a traditional curriculum looks like. And I find, especially as a program reviewer, that article has such grit to help faculty get serious about what good curriculum should look like. Do you miss doing SOTL research at all?
A bit, but I'm actually currently working on a paper with my wife that focuses on data collected in her classes, her undergraduate classes, on the impact of COVID and online learning and the transition from in-person to online learning that she's experiencing. So helping with the data analysis and writing of that paper that we hope to.
Can you share the
summer.
results here? Can you say what you've been finding?
I like to keep the suspense live.
Okay. That's
until
reasonable.
the paper comes out.
That's reasonable.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a slightly different question. One of the things I most admire about you is even though you're now in a position where you could shed psychology entirely, you really remain active as someone who contributes a lot of service in psychology. So not just Guidelines 3.0, but work as an academic program reviewer. Can you talk about why is academic program reviewing important or meaningful to you? What is it that you like about that? Why do you accept those offers when it takes a lot of work and doesn't actually pay particularly well? So why do you do that?
I think it's very interesting to see how different departments approach the challenge of offering excellent program. Every department wants to offer an excellent program, and they have different definitions of what an excellent program will include. They try to solve problems usually with very important constraints, insufficient numbers of faculty, issues regarding students' success, and maybe too many students are failing, issues of constraints having to do with space availability and ability to get students involved in research. And now that I've done this for a while in my own departments, and also by doing a number of program reviews and seeing how it's approached in other universities, I enjoy people listening to me when I have some suggestions. They don't necessarily follow my suggestions, but that's fine. It just, I get the sense that people are actually inviting me to give my opinion about things, and it can be based in some experience, and they can take pieces of what I have done and actually improve their program. In fact, the most rewarding situation was, it happened twice, that I was invited back to the same department at 5 or 6 year interval. And I was able to see some of the changes that they had made that were clearly in the report that the review team that I was part of had suggested. And they were now much advanced over where they had been. They still had some problems, but the problems were fewer, lesser, less critical, and was just really a rewarding experience to see that report actually had some impact.
There will always be problems in an academic program review. Yeah. And if they're not, I'm usually suspicious. If people write a self-study that indicates there are no problems, it's like, oh dear. Okay, so you want me just to sign off on that? That's not going to happen.
Those problems are buried well, or maybe not, maybe shallowly.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to read your 2010 article. Where did that article, because obviously Jane values it, and I'm guessing a lot of other people do as well. So where did that come out of? And can you just maybe give us a quick, I don't know, the summary?
I was in teaching of psychology, and it was a survey of catalogs. I had a team of undergraduate students review the catalogs of departments of psychology that listed all the courses that were offered and required. And because the courses are named different things at different universities, we had a standardized set of course names that we developed. And we coded the catalogs using the standard names. And we came up with a system for coding whether the course was required, was optional, was part of a requirement group. Say you take 1 out of 3, take 2 out of 4 of these courses, whether the course was a beginning course, middle course, end course, or a course that could be taken in any order. So the article described the typical psych program, of which there really was no totally typical program, but the number of programs offering certain courses, requiring course sequences. One of the things that I really still think is important for psych programs, but it's not always present that was in the article, was that programs sometimes have a required course sequence where other programs are, we called it flat. You take general psychology and then 36 credits of psych courses in any order. And I personally think that offering courses in some sequence, not a strict sequence all the way through, but some sequence, a clear beginning, a clear ending, and some pattern in the middle, allows students to have some common experience as they get into their upper level courses, so that instructor can have some expectation that students will know certain things, certain kinds of things, before they enter those advanced courses. And then you can teach the course as an advanced course because the students will know something first. If you have students who are taking this course as course 2 and as course 12 in the same class, you have to teach to both groups. And that's much more difficult than only teaching to students who are taking their sixth course or beyond. And there's certain specific courses that they may have taken at the beginning or near the beginning, which all students have when they get to the advanced level.
So that was a major recommendation of the paper.
That is, and it's still one of the major recommendations that I make during program reviews. Mm-hmm. If the program doesn't have any structure, sequential structure.
Yeah, and I think we talk about that impact on students as scaffolding, that if they have that basic information, it's not just that it's easier to teach students who are all at sort of the same level, but that if you know where they are, you certainly can build better structures.
You know how to explain things, Jane.
I know we're probably close to end of time, and I wanted to ask you a question about Guidelines 3.0, which is if I have my timing proper, by the time this drops, we will know whether APA has approved Guidelines 3.0. And so I'm wondering, since you were a veteran of 2 of the guidelines experiences, what kind of optimism do you have about the impact of Guidelines 3.0? Are you excited about what you think is potential? Are you worried about anything? Can you kind of give people a heads up of something to think about, why Guidelines 3.0 might be an important thing to get to know in the future?
Well, I know how Guidelines 2.0, which I also worked on, had impact. During all the program reviews that I was invited to participate in, there was a comparison done in the self-study of the curriculum of the department and the guidelines. Departments took Guidelines 2.0 very seriously and tried to either include elements within those guidelines, or they made decisions to not necessarily follow every detail. But they did it with the knowledge that either they didn't want to do it, or they actually more often didn't think they could do it because of resource limitations. And I thought that those guidelines were very important. So when you invited me to participate in 3, I was very excited to do that. I think they will have a tremendous impact on departments as they look at those guidelines and compare them to two. I think they will find them being not totally different, not requiring a complete restart of the curriculum, but perhaps having some modernization of the curriculum that would include more focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, related issues, also having a more clear focus on preparing students for what's next, preparing students for a full range of jobs, a full range of graduate school possibilities, including psychology and counseling, but not limited to psychology and counseling, helping students use the psychology major as one of the best majors on campus to prepare yourself for what you'll do later in life.
All right. So if APA circles back around and asks you to be on Guidelines 4.0, what are you going to say?
I'm retired now.
That's a while away, right? We have a minute before 4.0 starts.
Yeah, we've got a few months to rest.
Yeah.
Are you happy, Jane, with the way that 3.0 came out?
I am. I was amazed that we were able to accomplish what we did remotely, and I think APA owes the task force a whole lot of really good dinners. I'm not sure how we can redeem the coupon.
So if APA is listening,
that would be good.
Yeah.
You owe us dinners.
Uber Eats works.
Or fly us all into Washington so we can experience the cuisine of Washington.
It would be nice to celebrate
traditional, yes.
And actually, I'd like to also get together with the people in
because
person.
we never have.
Right. We never got together. This is the first time I met you, Garth.
Yeah.
And that, more important than the dinner is actually the opportunity to get together and get to know the people who are on that task force better as individuals.
And for that reason, sort of stunning that we were able to accomplish what we did in such a short period of time. I was very pleased with the team.
It was well led too, I must say.
Yeah, I have to say it was well led.
I love it. I love it. Michael, when you're thinking about guidelines, how do you think a department, because not every department is going to put themselves forward for review or something like that, right?
No, most universities and colleges have to go through some sort of external process.
Four-year universities for accreditation or whatever. Yeah. So how should to effectively use guidelines, how should that conversation go internally when departments are saying we are going to we're going to adopt these, or we're going to adopt 3.0 in some way, or we're going to use it to measure what we're doing. What's a good strategy for groups or departments to do this?
Well, before you decide to adopt the guidelines or any guidelines, I think conversations among faculty are essential. So I think the place to start is just have the faculty read the guidelines and have a substantial number of meetings and conversations about them. Discuss what you like and what you don't like about the guidelines. And if you do just that, you will have accomplished so much because you would have had the faculty think about the issues that are raised in the guidelines and make some explicit decisions about whether to do something the same way you've been doing it all along, or is there a reason to change? And getting faculty even think about things has an impact. Actually, I have another example of that. When I was the academic unit head in psychology, there was some concern about us not having enough writing in our program. And that actually was probably a conversation that came out of guidelines, either one or maybe two, but I'm not sure. I had faculty discuss writing in department meetings. I had a graduate student help analyze the syllabi of the faculty and determine what percentage of grades was coming from writing assignments. And we presented that data just to the faculty and had the faculty discuss it. We didn't require anything, but we talked about it. And then 2 years later, I had another graduate student do the same analysis of writing for what percentage of the grade was coming from writing assignments. And we found that we had probably tripled the percentage of grades coming from writing assignments. And I think it happened not because we required anything. We didn't change the curriculum at all. We just got faculty to better recognize that there was an issue, and that through those conversations that there were possibilities for writing assignments that didn't necessarily require faculty to invest enormous numbers of hours in grading writing assignments, because some writing assignments could be short, but they could still be opportunities to practice writing with feedback. And the faculty just stepped forward and did it. So adopting guidelines, going back to the original question of adopting guidelines, have conversations about the guidelines among your faculty, and those conversations may be the most important thing about the guidelines that you'll be able to.
I love the fact that you used that example, because you just illustrated one of the things that I most admire about you, which is your thorough embrace of assessment as a tool that helps you solve problems. That was really eloquent, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'm now thinking about guidelines as kind of a mirror that you can hold up and to reflect back to you. Not whether you're checking every box, but how are we doing? And how am I doing as an educator, as an individual educator? Am I bringing these things? You can apply it from the individual level to the department level, and I think it really scales well in that way. Yeah. Have you enjoyed the work on 3.0? Because I imagine what you're going to say is that you could see the influence that you could have even more widely than your institution. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I was glad to get back into APA project, a project of national importance and national impact. Yeah.
I will say of course we don't know each other very well, but I will say when I jumped into, and I came into 3.0 late, but when I came in, there's certain people when you're in meetings or working on something together, and they start talking, and you're like, oh, this person's been places and seen things, and they talk with an amount of authority or intention of just I have an opinion. I have a strong opinion about this. Not that you were shutting anybody else's opinions down, but definitely the authority came through. And I just want to tell you, I appreciate that. Sometimes when people are contributing to those conversations, they're contributing with kind of a narrow lens. And it was clear to me that you were contributing with a very broad lens towards that. So again, I think it's my compliment to what you were bringing to that.
It's a good assessment.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah. What do you want to finish up with, Jane? Do you want to end on 3.0? You want to talk about JMU with Michael or anything else?
Well, I will just say that the years I spent at JMU were terrific years, in part because Michael was just an exceptional organizer. So all of that work that he did as an editor in high school, good God, did that pay off in ways that I benefited from, as well as everyone in the school. So he's really an outstanding administrator.
Thank you, Jane.
You're welcome.
Well, Michael, thank you for your hospitality, for hosting us here this afternoon, and for your time. And I wish you all the best in what you're doing right now and what's next for you. And it's just been a pleasure. So thanks for chatting with us today.
Happy to. And I think now I need to go and cook some brats.
That sounds great to me.
Yeah, we're ready. We're ready.
Thanks.
Okay.